Mr. Athie, who is quite vocal on issues which continue to affect our Caribbean region. We're focusing this morning on the implications for the Caribbean and Caribbean development based on the trends that we're monitoring in and around government administrations and electoral processes. Mr. Marte, you're back with us, correct?
Yes, I'm hearing you clearly, very clearly.
We had an intriguing discussion on what we've witnessed happening in the Caribbean, the dismantling of institutions which have supported the connectivity of our Caribbean region and the integration of the Caribbean for many years. I was asking the question before we lost connection, based on those trends, have we become a region of qualified derelicts, because we have so many qualified people who sit by idly and say nothing, apparently supporting the dismantling of these institutions?
Yeah, that is true. Qualified derelicts, yes, but even derelict cars are recycled and converted into something useful. So all hope is not lost. We can recycle and convert the derelict into something useful. And that is what I would like to spend whatever little time we have left focusing on.
Sure.
I think if we in the Caribbean could once again focus our attention and target our resource investments on a Caribbean development project, a vision that people like George Odlum used to have when he spoke about one Caribbean. You know, if we can focus on that, I'll give you some examples. Once we can refocus on that Caribbean agenda for prosperity, then I believe we will not so easily fall victim to the gangsters and tyrants who now find themselves in the leadership of our respective islands and countries and regional institutions. For example, I mentioned earlier food. The Caribbean can resolve its food dependence problem, its bad food and hence wellness challenge, by focusing on something we had before, the Caribbean Food and Nutrition Program, which existed back in the 80s. We need to resuscitate a coordinated regional approach guided by institutions like the School of Agriculture at UWI, various schools of agriculture and training of technical personnel and training of technical personnel and training of technical personnel. This cricket team worked well together. Our teams can also work well together and ensure that in a steady fashion we gradually increase our production of high quality nutritious foods, moving towards naturals and organics, etc., and gradually reduce our dependence on imported food, save that foreign exchange for things that we really cannot produce. So we need a Caribbean regional food and nutrition project with elements of it, arms of it in the different countries. We did have a Caribbean food plan where we had in fact located the countries in the region, what they were best suited for, what islands were best suited for root crops like yams, tanyas, dasheen, and so forth, what others were suited best for spices, what others were suited best for fruit crops, tree crops, etc. We have all that. That's where we were headed. But that plan got derailed. If we can put that plan back on track, we wouldn't have time to be going after each other and dick-calling each other, as we say in Creole. That's one example. Take culture and music and art. You all had a folk research center in St. Lucia, which actually was a sample, and in fact we in Dominica built on that, applied that template to creating our own folk research activities here. And the same happened in Antigua. The same happened in Grenada and so forth. So, but we needed to bring it together as we had started. We had started, all these cultural workers had started working together writing each other's plays, editing, acting in each other's plays, etc., etc. So it meant that there was no time for foolishness. There was time only to be productive in your respective fields. Take the steel pan music, the steel pan movement. In every island of the Caribbean today, there's a steel band. There's steel band music. But have we graduated to the point where we have a Caribbean regional steel pan institute, where the research that Trinidad is doing into new types of metals and new designs and so on will be spread and shared with our local scientists, etc. Or the teaching of music. Every primary school in the Caribbean needs to have a steel band program. So where you teach music, but using an indigenous Caribbean instrument, instead of allowing Japan and Sweden and Norway and the United States to sort of take over the front edge, the front line of that important innovation of the Caribbean. That's another sample. Take housing. We all need housing. We need thousands of our people to be properly housed. But we need housing that is designed to deal with our local conditions. It's designed to create jobs, not to create new import streams. In design, we need to create jobs in architectural design, in materials development. Why don't we have today, if you will, prefabricated housing components that are built using materials that we now have?
Let me attempt to answer that question, Mr. Martin. Why don't we? Perhaps, and you provide some addition to the answer. Is it perhaps these initiatives, structures, and systems are in support of good people and perhaps not good politics?
Exactly. You put your finger on it, my brother. That's why I say you are La Bonne. You are a La Bonne. You put your finger on it. Because that's what happened. And that is why it's not going to be easy to do any of these things that I'm suggesting, Even the culture, the art, and the music and so on. It's not going to be easy. Because it's under pressure from elements and forces in our society that would rather see us identify ourselves as appendages to other people's culture than as the creators of our own culture. And in fact, the people who most want to see that happen are the persons in our society who don't want us to have a high sense of self-worth, which means that we wouldn't be easily fooled. We cannot be easily bought. We cannot be swayed by somebody putting $500 in our pocket. We cannot be bought by music and fried chicken and rum and so forth, because our eyesight, our mind sight is on something more elevated, of more value. And so, yes, you are right. People who want to hold on to power for power's sake will want to dismantle and prevent any movement in the direction of regional addressing of these problems. That is at the heart of it. And how do we restart that engine? We have the engine. How do we restart? We restart that engine by restoring the links. That is why programs like yours, Good Morning St. Lucia, because you're reaching out to other islands and you're letting St. Lucians stay in St. Lucia. And you can learn about what's going on in Dominica. You can know that there still are people throughout the region who are thinking that way, who value the Caribbean, not just our individual islands, because we understand being an island state in the Caribbean is an accident of history. It's an accident of history. Our ancestors were brought here, on a slave ship, and they dropped some here, they dropped some over there, they dropped some there, and so on. So we are accident, but we have converted that accident, like the derelicts of the society, into something of value, something unique, something that the rest of the world spends millions to have a little bite of, but we are not protecting it. And so if we don't protect it, we're going to lose it. And so I believe if the politicians of our region were articulating such a vision, were promoting and developing policies, programs, if the phenomenon of political manifestos in the Caribbean could be seen to eventually reflect that one vision of a Caribbean, even if it was presented to the people of Barbados or St. Vincent and so forth, but it reflected one vision, we would have a region that gradually worked itself back to being together and acting together.
Unfortunately, Mr. Marte, it reflects the vision and the wants of those who finance the campaigns and who finance the political regimes. Lastly, let's end there, and in our quest to shift the goalposts and to turn things around here in the Caribbean, dealing with matters of campaign financing is critical in that mission that we're speaking of now.
Absolutely, absolutely, as a matter of fact, because whereas 40 years ago, one could say, yes, it was local businessmen and local professionals making donations to a political party for their campaign and expecting to be compensated for that. At the very least, it was local. But you know who it is today? It is Chinese, it is Russians, it is Arabs of one sort or another. It is businessmen who have no links to any of the islands in which they are financing. That's part of what it is. Yep. And you know what's sad about it? Listen to the real tragedy of campaign financing, particularly in the case of Dominica. We have this thing called CBI, right? The Citizenship by Investment Program, where politicians who should be protecting, if you will, the legacy of our ancestral struggles for independence and freedom, are instead selling it to the highest bidder. They're selling our passports, our identity, and they're not just selling Dominica's identity, because the passport we have are not Dominican passports.
It's stamped. It's also stamped with CARICOM. Yep.
They are CARICOM passports. So you have leaders now who openly are selling CARICOM identity. In other words, they're reinstituting slavery, of their own people by selling their people's identity. And guess what? They are taking that money and they are using that money to finance the bondage that they keep the people under. That's what's happened here in Dominica.
Dangerous times in the Caribbean, Mr. Marte. However, we've come to the end of the show today. Okay. I assure you we'll continue our discussion. I'm thinking along the lines of a One Caribbean connection, that sort of thing. But we will continue this discourse. It's very important, and we cannot continue to bow to the pressures and powers of those who would like to continue to see regional institutions diminish. So I want to thank you, Mr. Marte, for coming on this morning and sharing your insight and your wisdom with us. I personally will see you soon, and on this program our viewers will hear and see you again in the not too distant future. Okay, my friend. Thank you very much. You're most welcome. Thank you very much. Congratulations to you and your dad on what is an extraordinary revitalization of Caribbean media and Caribbean journalism. Thank you so much for that. You're most welcome. Our pleasure here on the platform. We're guarded, though, that there are those who perhaps do not wish to see the progress that we have and continue to make here on St. Lucia. But the mission is bigger than the high offices that they hold. Absolutely. And, have a good day. You yourself, they will not derail the efforts. We want to thank you for staying with us here throughout this morning's program and for supporting our broadcast here in Dominica during the last 72 hours. It's our final show here on the soil of the Nature Isle. We will be back home and on air from St. Lucia tomorrow.